something crazy happened. The British news people have completely turned against Lando Norris. He was supposed to be the next Lewis Hamilton for Britain, but after last weekend the news people decided it's not going to happen. They even dropped a huge bomb on him, just like British news always does. They didn't hold back at all. But are they right though? Is Lando Norris not the next Hamilton? Is he just a good driver in a fast car instead of an amazing super driver? And if you thought that was mean, even Martin Brundle went hard on Norris in his claims about being lucky, after everyone was excited and waiting. The British news decided that Lando Norris's chances of winning the championship were crushed by Max Verstappen's performance in the Brazilian Grand Prix. This is how they reacted to Verstappen's 62-point lead with 3 big races and 1 sprint race left. Let's start with BBC Sport, who have been supporting Norris all season long. But over the last few weeks, the BBC has been watching how far apart Norris and Verstappen are. They focused on how many points per race the McLaren driver needs to score to become world champion in Abu Dhabi. But Verstappen's drive, which people say is one of the best wet weather drives ever, crushed Norris's dreams. According to BBC Sport, the race summary then admits that Verstappen's 4th world championship never really looked like it was in danger, but there can be no doubt now. The British newspaper Daily Mail also believes Norris has very little chance of winning the world championship. In a flash, Lando Norris's dream surely died on a wet track as slippery as a politician's promise, the article says. Verstappen is the world's best driver. The Daily Mail goes on to say. The Daily Mail continues by saying that Norris just wasn't good enough that day, dismissing Norris's argument about being lucky. More simply, you cannot start on pole and lose ground to a weapons-grade talent starting 16 places behind, they wrote. The Times also criticized Norris's performance. They said it was not the driving of a champion in waiting. They also showed a picture of Verstappen with one hand on the World Championship trophy, meaning that Norris's title hopes almost disappeared. They are also done with the math and have figured out that Verstappen can become champion in Las Vegas, simply by finishing ahead of the McLaren driver. The Sun newspaper had the title, "Norris title hopes fade at the aborted start." The newspaper noticed how Verstappen rubbed salt into Norris's wounds by pointing out Norris's mistake of leaving the grid. Overall, the British news seems to have reached the same conclusion. Norris's title hopes are almost dead. Although not impossible, Verstappen only has to do better than him in the next race. That was only the newspaper people who always judged them on their last race. But for the live TV people on the scene to turn on him, that's a whole different level. And even the pro-British driver Martin Brundle turned on him. That's how disappointing the performance was. Martin Brundle said Lando Norris lacks the killer instinct against Max Verstappen in the Drivers' Championship. This was especially true in a Grand Prix weekend where the McLaren driver looked ready to close the gap on the Dutch driver in the title race. But the opposite happened, with Verstappen doing amazingly well and Norris struggling terribly. Norris thought it was lucky that Verstappen was able to pass during the red flag stoppage. But Brundle, speaking to Sky Sports News, said that if Norris watches the race again, he would change his mind. "I think he will, because Max was in a class of his own. Those conditions suit his talent level. The McLaren wasn't the fastest car in the rain, which was a bit surprising because they looked so good in qualifying in wet conditions." Brundle continued by saying that Norris himself was lucky that he didn't have to face Verstappen in Q3. Max got unlucky with the red flag in qualifying, but he stayed out on track in the race and expected a safety car or a red flag situation. So he knew what to do, and then he just took off and won by 19 seconds at a canter. Really, it was a classic drive. Brundle feels that Norris, who is 24, still has a lot of room to get better. It's about improving everything at the level he's at. He's had some amazing victories, not least in Zandvoort and Singapore, where he just ran off and hit a little bit like Max in Brazil. But he lacks the experience of fighting for a world championship. And I think that's a whole new set of challenges and rules, and that's what he will learn from this year. So does Norris have what it takes to win a championship in the very competitive world of Formula One? Sometimes you wonder if he lacks the killer instinct up against Max, who we know can be pretty brutal in combat. But I think Lando will learn a lot from this season. And Max winning 7 of the first 10 races pretty much put him out of reach, really. Brundle finished by saying that with Verstappen potentially being crowned world champion for the 4th time when the season starts again in Vegas later this month, Brundle believes Norris, who has 3 victories in Miami, the Netherlands, and Singapore, will benefit greatly from his first experience competing for major honors this season. Although McLaren has had the fastest car for much of the season, Norris has been unable to regularly close the gap on Verstappen. Brundle believes it was too much of a challenge for Norris to overtake Verstappen, who started the season with 7 wins in the first 10 races despite Red Bull's fading condition, and he feels Verstappen is very certain to win his 4th straight title in the coming weeks, with Norris currently depending on an almost impossible set of circumstances. When told that Norris trailed Verstappen by 84 points at one stage in F1 2024, Brundle said, "If you add all that up together, Lando needed to take a chunk of points out of Max. every single race and hoped that there was his teammate and a Ferrari or two and even a Mercedes or two between them. But one turnaround like in Brazil and that little adventure was over, by and large, unless a lot of weird things happen now in the final races. The British news has all come to the same conclusion. It wasn't Norris's time yet. Even with the fastest car, he keeps making mistakes regularly and seems to fumble under the pressure of a full title fight. But not everyone sees it that way. In an attempt to save his driver's image, Andrea Stella has denied that Lando Norris makes too many mistakes, claiming that the team shares some responsibility for his troubles in Brazil's rainy conditions. An unfortunate pit stop, which happened just before the safety car was deployed for Franco Colapinto's crash, cost him more positions than Verstappen and the two Alpines, while a moment at turn 4 saw him pass by George Russell, before another at turn 1 allowed Charles Leclerc through. Norris finished 6th, half a minute behind Verstappen, who started 17th and won by 20 seconds. I made a couple of mistakes which I didn't have to, and it cost me a couple of positions in the end, Norris told reporters. Sky Deutschland asked McLaren team leader Stella, "Does Norris make too many mistakes?" "No, I don't think that's a fair statement about Lando," he said. "First of all, I would like to acknowledge that Max is now the big favorite for the World Championship. Of course, he was the favorite before. To be honest, he's a fantastic driver, did a fantastic job, and Lando is behind him right now. We are proud of where we are, and Lando should be very proud of his performance. A race like today can happen. It can happen that you have problems here and there. We will learn our lesson from this and get stronger and stronger. Verstappen may be the front runner, but Stella is not giving up. The dream lives on for the season," he insisted. "Overall, we have had a great and rapid development curve. We'll take the lesson with us. If we don't win this year, we'll come back even stronger next year." Stella blames McLaren for Norris's two expensive mistakes, claiming that both the Briton and Oscar Piastri suffered in the rain. "If I look at Lando himself, the main things to review are to do with his going off track, which cost us positions. But we did struggle with both drivers, including qualifying. We did struggle with locking the tires," he said to Brazil's media. "So while we talk about drivers, I think we as a team have to acknowledge that we didn't give the drivers easy material today to handle in these difficult conditions. The big question is, will Norris be able to challenge for the title next year, especially if Red Bull figure out their car? What do you think? And is it fair that the news is turning on him? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.